And we're back for the Argonaut Weekly. Matt Rowley here with Rob Walden from UWF Sports Information, and we'll recap the week that was in UWF basketball. The Argonauts had a bit of a light week this past week, just one game going on the road for the first time in Gulf South Conference play, went up to Livingston, Alabama to take on University of West Alabama, and a down day for both the teams. We'll start with the women's team. The Argonauts started off really well, facing a West Alabama team that had gone on a remarkable run earlier in the season. Misty Dale, an excellent player for the Tigers, going up at halftime but fell late in that one. What can you tell us about that game?
Well, Argonauts came out like gangbusters in that one. Took a 17-point lead late in the first half, led by 13 going into the halftime locker room, 40-27. Really did a good job in the opening half of getting the ball down low to their top two players, especially the big players. They really have been the most productive players on the team. Jessica Young, Octavia Beard, and there was a real effort to get the ball to those two in the first half. They combined for 18 points in the opening half. Not a surprise to see the Argos up by 13. Second half, a little less emphasis on those two. Unfortunately, they combined for only 4 points. They each only hit just one field goal in the second half. Slowly but surely, West Alabama whittled that lead down. Argos shot under 30% from the floor in the second half. West Alabama took the lead with about 10 minutes to play. Argos retook the lead on 3 separate occasions, but in the end just didn't have enough and fell 66-61.
Yeah, the Argonauts have dug themselves in an 0-3 hole now in GSC play, so they'll need to find a way to turn things around to get into the GSC tournament hunt. What can you see that the team can improve on as they go on the road this week, taking on Valdosta State and Lambeth?
Well, obviously the shooting percentage was a little low in the second half for the West Florida women's team, and a lot of that has to do with the kind of shots that they're taking. You look at Young, you look at Beard, and they're both shooting over 50% from the floor. So when you look at things to improve upon, that's probably number one on the list. Get the ball to them more. They're more efficient players offensively than really anybody else on the team. So the more touches that Young and Beard get going forward, the better opportunity that the Argos have to dig out of that hole. It's a tough one, 0-3 in the conference. Already staring at a game-and-a-half deficit in front of them in 5th place, and 2 more road games coming up. So it's not going to get easier, but there is the talent on this club, no question about it, to make that run and to still get back in GSC tournament contention. Starts on Thursday. Got to get the ball to Young and Bearden against Valdosta State.
Switching gears now, going over to the UWF men's team. It was a different story for the men on Thursday at West Alabama. They started slow and were in a big hole early in the game. Were able to come back in the second half and make a game out of it, but just too much ground to cover there and lost at West Alabama.
Well, the first half of the West Alabama game last Thursday was really a continuation from the second half of the Saturday loss to North Alabama. Remember, Argos got outscored by 18 in the second half, losing to the Lions last Saturday. They came out and were down 18 at the half to West Alabama again this past Thursday night. Ended up being a 23-point gap at one point in the second half. After that, Coach Bob Stennett changed the lineup a little bit. He had mostly reserves out on the court, and those guys played hard, no question about it. They held West Alabama scoreless. After falling behind by 23 points, held West Alabama scoreless for about 9.5 minutes in the second half, which is a pretty remarkable achievement. Some of that had to do with the tempo of the game as well. West Alabama was really slowing it down, getting to single digits every time they had the ball in the shot clock. Argos played great defense in the second half. Unfortunately, with some of those reserves on the court, the offense was a little more limited, not quite as dynamic as usual. So over that stretch, the Argos could only score 15 points of their own, making it kind of difficult to come back. Eventually, the lead was cut to 6. West Alabama kind of recovered, hit some free throws down the stretch, and left with a 62-54 win.
Let's take a look ahead now for the men's team as they have a tough test facing Valdosta State, one of the more powerful teams in the conference. They'll be facing Valdosta on the road Thursday and then Lambeth on Sunday. Same situation for the men's team, down 0-3 in conference play.
Yeah, it's a big a big task in front of the West Florida men's team, just like the women, no question about it. And you mentioned Valdosta, not just one of the most powerful teams in the GSE, they're one of the best teams in the country. They've been ranked top 25 just about all season long, and deservedly so. We saw them here for the McDonald Fleming Moorhead Christmas Classic back at the end of December. They were a spectacular team, blew out Mercy and Wilmington. So Argos are going to have to get more consistent, no question about it. The guys that they count on to be their leading scorers, Jamar Moore, Mike Lewis, those guys have got to bring it night in and night out. Instead of the roller coaster, you got to have consistent efforts. And, one encouraging sign that I thought we saw, especially in the second half on Thursday, is, some of those role players really got involved. We saw Marquise Mathis really dominate stretches of the second half, especially on the glass. I thought Peter Cannole looked very good. Keldrick White played well. Anthony Sims, like he always does, chipped in, did the little things that help a team succeed. So it's nice for those guys to play well. Argos certainly need them, but more than anything, got to have Jamar, got to have Mike scoring on a consistent basis. And, even after Valdosta State, it doesn't get easy for this Argonaut team. The Lambeth game on Sunday will be a tough one. Lambeth's already beaten West Alabama this season, so some very tough teams on the schedule. It's going to be tough to dig out of that hole, but the Argos, again, they're very capable.
We'll go ahead and switch gears now as this past week we had the All-Girls Sports Day here on campus, and that was an excellent event here that the department always is looking for ways to engage the community, and that's an excellent event that we looked forward to every year. Hundreds of girls on campus, and our women's teams especially getting active and teaching them different skills. Our strength and conditioning coach, Kent Morgan, about stretching and getting the body ready for physical activity. And so that was an excellent event that we had over the weekend here on campus.
Yeah, Girls Sports Day, always a great event, and it's great to see how the student athletes and coaches really respond to that group of girls to get them more interested, not even just in specific sports, but in active lifestyle that can benefit them, in the future just as much as they do today. And of course, one of those women's team, women's soccer, although their season's been over for a couple months, celebrating a scoring milestone, an achievement, if you will, this past week.
That's right. The UWF women's soccer team, they've been their season has been over for a few months, but it was official now that they were the leading scoring team in Division II for the second straight season. And also on the individual stats, Shakira Duncan, of course, the leading scorer and the leading the nation in points and goals,
right,
individually for the second straight season. So a big milestone for the team there, and definitely an encouraging sign for the team going forward here, as it's the UWF women have really cemented themselves as a top team, especially on offense.
Yeah, and of course the women's soccer season, like the men's soccer season and the volleyball season this past fall, wrapped up with Gulf South Conference titles. Of course, it's our final week of basketball only on the calendar here at UWF. The last week that it's just basketball. Starting next week is baseball and the rest of the spring sports. Of course, Matt and I will talk about that next week. But this week's schedule, a double dip in basketball, 2 doubleheaders, both on the road. Thursday against Valdosta State. That doubleheader will get started at 5 p.m. Central Time. Of course, you can listen live right here at goargos.com. Then on Sunday, both teams travel up to Jackson, Tennessee, maybe the biggest road trip of the season for the Argonauts. They'll take on Lambeth, men's and women's action. That'll get started at 1 p.m. Central Time. Of course, you can follow the live stats right here at goargos.com.